All right, so let's review our forms of a linear equation. We've worked a little bit with standard form. Standard form is ax plus by equals c. Notice that x and y are on the same side of the equal sign. X is first. When we have in standard form, it is often used to find the intercepts, is one thing that it is useful for. And one rule that has to happen is that a, b, and c, those are going to be the numbers that you see in the equation. A, b, and c are all going to be integers, okay? Slope-intercept form, we are very familiar with. Y equals mx plus b. It gives us the slope. It gives us the intercept. Y is isolated in slope-intercept form, and that is a key characteristic of that. Then, point-slope form, we have just recently learned y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. This came from the slope formula. This is a rearranging of the slope formula. This particular form gives us a point, x1, y1, and it gives us the slope. We can use it to graph pretty easily as well. Okay, now one conversion we have done before is we have converted from standard form to slope-intercept form. When we are given an equation like this and we wanted to isolate y, we're just going to briefly review this. Remember that we subtract the x from both sides. That gives me 5y equals negative 2x plus 10, and then we divide everything by 5, and we get y equals negative 2/5 x plus 2. We've done that before. We did that back when we were first learning slope-intercept form. Now we want to learn how to go between some other forms. We're going to start in point-slope form most every time, and then we're going to be told what we want to convert to. So here they give us a point and a slope. They ask for point-slope form. So this one, we're just going to plug into point-slope form. Y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. If you need to label, there's x1, y1. The slope is negative 3. So we say y minus 9 equals negative 3 times x minus 1. Point-slope form, done. Now, this next one, they give us a point in the slope, and they ask us to write it in slope-intercept form. We have done this. We could use slope-intercept form and solve for b. Here is how we've done this. We solved for b, then we plugged it into slope-intercept form. We're going to start with point-slope form, and I actually showed you this while we were introducing point-slope form to sort of get us where we're going. So let's start with point-slope form. Y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. There's my x1 and my y1. So I say y minus a negative 7, which becomes y plus 7. Remember, if you need to show that, go ahead and show it. Equals negative 1/2 times x minus a negative 4, which becomes x plus 4. Now, to get this in slope-intercept form, remember, we need to isolate y. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to distribute. Negative 1/2 times x is negative 1/2 x. Negative 1/2 times 4 is negative 2. If you need to go to the side and do your fraction work, you can. Then we need to get rid of that positive 7, so we're going to subtract 7 from both sides. It's a constant, so we put it under the negative 2, and we get y equals negative 1/2 x minus 9. So going from point-slope form to slope-intercept form is not too bad. Distribute, clear your parentheses, then move the constant that is with y, and then you should be done. Now, the last one that is the biggest pain is getting things into standard form. And the reason is, in slope-intercept form and point-slope form, it's okay to have a fraction. But in standard form, you need everything to be integers. You cannot have fractions in standard form. But just like we did before, we're going to start with point slope. So we're going to do y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. So we're going to label, and we're going to say y minus a negative 4, which becomes y plus 4, equals 2/3 times x minus 6. So that's point slope form. The next thing we want to do is sort of get it in slope-intercept form. So we're going to do what we did a second ago. We're going to distribute that 2/3. 2/3 times x is 2/3 x. 2/3 times negative 6. If I do 2/3 times 6, 3 goes into 6 2 times, I get minus 4. I'm going to subtract my 4 from both sides, and I get y equals 2/3 x minus 8. Okay? Now, that is from point slope to slope intercept. What do we do to get it to standard? Well, the deal is we've got to get rid of this fraction. We cannot have a fraction in standard form. So the trick here that we're going to do, in order to get rid of that fraction, we're going to multiply everything, and I mean everything, in the equation by that denominator. Okay? I have a dear teacher friend who says we're multiplying by the magic number. And the magic number is this denominator, and in this case it's 3. So we're going to do sort of a distributive property thing. We're going to multiply everything by 3. And here's what happens. 3 times y is 3y. 3 times 2/3. If you need to see it, that's 3 times 2/3. Those 3's are going to cancel, and you're left with 2. Guess what? The fraction went away. And then 3 times negative 28 is negative 24. My friend calls it the magic number because it made the fraction disappear. Okay? Now, at this point, the next thing we need to do is get x and y on the same side of the equal sign. So we are going to move the x. So we're going to subtract 2x here. We're going to subtract 2x from the other side. And we're going to get negative 2x plus 3y equals negative 24. So notice we have x and y on the same side of the equal sign, and we don't have any fractions. Now, some people say that standard form, that a, this number in front of x, the coefficient of x, needs to be positive. And that's the way I was taught. I have seen different places do it different ways, but I would, at this point, make the coefficient of x positive. If it's already positive, you're good. If it's negative, here's what you do. You change all the signs. Basically, you're dividing everything by -1, or you're multiplying everything by -1. But if that coefficient of x is negative, just change all your signs and that fixes it. So this is standard form. So this is the one that's the biggest pain. We start with point slope form, we move it to slope intercept form, and then we move it to standard form.